Hey, sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to our Sunday night recap of all the games that happened today. I'm really excited about this show because I think we finally figured out all of our little weird issues from last week with the audio. So I'll be able to actually interact with everybody that's going to come on the show today who's watched these games and studied them. I had the chance to get some eyeballs on some of the games as well, so I can interact and find out what's happening. So really excited about that. And I think what we're going to do right now is quickly go over all the scores to get a handle on what happened in what order. So let's start off this show with, first of all, we had the Raptors and the Kings, and the Raptors hammered the Kings by 15. Then we had the Celtics Pistons in an interesting game that ended up with the Celtics winning by 10. Nuggets and Pacers was an interesting, spirited game, went to overtime, and Oladipo looked like Michael Jordan down the stretch. I couldn't believe it. The Pelicans were frustrating the Sixers at home and beat them by 7 in the high-scoring game. And we had the Timberwolves and the Mavericks. The Wolves won by 5. They hung on at the end there. And then we just had the game with the Knicks holding on as well against the Hawks in some kind of rough, not that interesting kind of play. But hey, it was the NBA. They had the basketball bouncing around and some interesting stuff. So with that in mind, let's bring on Vivek Jacob, who is going to talk about the first game, the Toronto Raptors game. He is a longtime contributor to BBallBreakdown, and he writes a lot of stuff for us. And so here we go with Vivek, and he's going to talk to us about his impressions of the Raptors game from earlier today. So, Vivek, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Coach Nick. How are you?
I'm great to see you. Great to actually interact with you in person. I think this is like the first time we've ever really, saw each other live, having emailed and whatnot for all this time. So great to have you here. Let's break it down. What were your thoughts and concerns and issues or hopes and dreams from the Raptors game today?
So for the game today, the Raptors got off to a strong start, 17-2 run to open the game. And I think that sort of set the tone. I think you could see the players sort of realize that they didn't need to have their A game, so to speak, to close this one out. And you saw them sort of bend but not break the rest of the way. In the third quarter, it was about 67-64. And then the Raptors went on a big run, 12-1 run that got them some breathing room again. And then they sort of rode out that fourth quarter and put them away. For the Kings, I was pretty disappointed. I was looking forward to seeing what De'Aaron Fox could do, but he had 7 turnovers in just 23 minutes. Pretty disappointing night for him. Buddy Hield with 6 turnovers again. So that was disappointing. When the Kings, overall, they turned it over 21 times. You're not going to beat too many teams when you take 14 less shots. So that was a big problem as well.
Sure, and Buddy looked really good at the beginning. He was really on fire when I was watching that, and he's coming off the bench now, which is interesting. So it looks like he might be finding his rhythm on offense as far as jump shooting, which is interesting. But yeah, he looks like he's not a rookie, but he kind of had some rookie mistakes. And certainly, De'Aaron Fox, he looks like a rookie, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, and the turnovers, they're the typical young mistakes that you see. Driving into the lane, going up in the air without knowing exactly what he wants to do, and then kicking it out into opponents' hands. And there were a couple of times where they were trying to run some sets, and just on simple sort of handoffs, they're turning the ball over. And those are focus issues, which sort of transcend from that 17-2 start. And that's where I think the Kings have their biggest issues, just setting that culture of coming in and playing hard every night. And right now it's not there.
There's a rumor going on that the Raptors have like some newfangled offense going on. And I'm not quite sure that's the case. I haven't had a chance to really dive deep into it. So are you seeing any kind of different offense this year?
They do run some similar sets in terms of just sort of getting to destination plays. But I think the big change has been DeMar DeRozan's mindset. And he's really looking to kill teams with the pass. That's something that he said before the season started, and he's delivering on that. He's penetrating, he's attracting the defense. And the big transition that you're seeing now is the transition from him taking those mid-range twos and kicking them out now for either three-pointers or getting guys cutting into the lane for twos and getting sort of more of that Murray ball action. And so I think that's been the big difference. And then you look at Lowry and CJ Miles, they've sort of hit a groove now. They struggled tonight, but overall, in terms of three-point shooting, they're the two main guys that the Raptors look to over the past month. Lowry's attempting 9.8 threes a game, and he's shooting 44% from three.
Wow.
So I think that's really turned around for them.
Wow. Okay, that's great because he takes a lot of tough threes generally, and he didn't do very well today with 3 for 12. But overall, the team struggled under 30% from three, but it didn't seem to matter. The Kings are just kind of a mess. They have these interesting pieces, and I just can't quite put my hand about why they're not doing better. But I suppose it's going to be an uphill climb for Jaeger to kind of change the culture, get these guys to buy in, and figure out probably even like which lineups to play together. I mean, Frank Mason to me is really generally impressive. Didn't have a very good game today, but I like him coming off the bench too as a tough, third or fourth guard off the bench.
Yeah, I think today it was just a case of Jaeger just trying to find a lineup that would work. You could looking through the stats, no lineup played more than 10 minutes in this game, and you could just see Jaeger just struggle to find a lineup that could really give him what he was looking for and sort of take away the Raptors' strengths. You could see even when the bench came in for the Raptors, Siakam and Poeltl, even though Siakam struggled offensively, Poeltl and Siakam, they combined for 6 offensive rebounds, just keeping the ball alive. And again, it just goes back to the Kings' energy and focus. Not really
sure.
There.
And a really quick thing, I was watching the very beginning of the game, and the Kings were down, I think 12-0 maybe, and down big early. And it's funny because you call a timeout and you try and get regrouped. Every team always comes back from that 12-0 start. They always do. And I'm almost wondering at this point, like, why even bother calling a timeout? Because you just know it's going to happen anyway, right? No one's ever going to win 100-0 anyway. So it's like, I don't know. I found that funny. I suppose maybe the argument is that timeout got them going and they got back in the game. But they actually took the lead at some point, I believe, late in the first, early in the second, right?
Yes, they did. Yeah. And again, I think that stemmed more to the fact that the Raptors got off to such a strong start that I think they sort of laid off and said, hey, we don't really need our A game tonight. And you look at the game Serge Ibaka had, he came out strong. Lowry initially made a 3 with Anunoby as part of that 17-2 run. And then you could just see DeRozan sort of picking them apart, finished with 9 assists. And he actually had 9 assists through 3 quarters, didn't have an assist in the fourth. And so they were really getting whatever they wanted. And honestly, if it weren't for the threes not falling at the rate that they have over the past month, it could have been a lot worse.
For sure. And I wanted to do some shout out some people I really like on the Raptors. I love Van Vliet, the way he plays. Nothing spectacular and crazy, but I love the way he competes. And this guy, Anunoby, like, I don't know much about him at all, but every time I watch him play, even for a couple minutes, he does something that really makes me excited about it. So I think that he's one of those guys. And I just don't know. Really quickly, Norman Powell, what's going on? Why is he not getting more minutes?
Norman Powell, so he was the starter at the beginning of the year, and he just struggled to shoot from the outside. And then he had the right hip pointer injury, and Anunoby stepped into the starting lineup and really did a great job in that role. I think Anunoby fits that starting lineup better just because he's not someone that needs to be catered to offensively. He can just sort of be in the corner, wait for those threes. And defensively, he's bigger than Powell. He's more suited to guarding the bigger threes in the league. And so I think that's an advantage for the Raptors as well. Powell has been better since he's returned from that hip pointer injury. And I think it does suit him playing alongside Myles, who complements his game really well as being that sort of catch and shoot guy while Powell can penetrate and get to the basket. So I think that opens up some things for him. And he has been better when he's come off the bench since the injury.
Awesome. Well, a great breakdown, really great information. Tell everybody where they can find you across the internet.
Of course, you can find me here at BBallBreakdown. You can find me on Raptors Republic and North Pole Hoops. And on Twitter, you can follow me at Vivek M. Jacob. All
right. Well, Vivek, excuse me. Wait, give me the exact pronunciation.
You know what? I feel like there's a bit of a negative stigma with Vivek Ranadiv. So yeah, right. I think I'm going to just go with Vivek.
Vivek. Okay, you got it. Well, Vivek, thanks for joining us. Great stuff, and we will catch up to you next time. So make sure everybody out there find him and follow him and read him on BBallBreakdown.com for sure. So we'll talk to you later, Vivek. Okay, now we're going to have the next game up, which is the Celtics versus the Detroit, and we are going to bring in Duncan Smith, a newer member of the B-Ball Breakdown podcast family, excuse me. So let me bring him in here for 1 second, and then we're going to see how this works. So Duncan Smith, it is a pleasure to have you live on camera and to actually interact with you like this instead of email or DM or Twitter. So how's it going, my man?
Oh, that's great. It's a delight to actually be on the pod, be on the live stream with you after, watching listening to so many of your podcasts and watching the Periscopes and everything. Feels like it's about time. So it's nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I've been, I've been following you and seeing you around for a while now too. So it's great to actually interact. And we have a game. We have Boston versus Detroit. And what were your initial thoughts about the whole game?
I thought the Pistons were probably going to be fairly hard up. It's hard to beat a really good team like the Celtics twice in a season. And the Pistons didn't really appear to have much of a flow or a rhythm until late in the third quarter, early in the fourth quarter, honestly. They came out of the locker room in the second half really flat. I think the Celtics went on a 10-0 stretch to make it like an 18-point game. Andre Drummond had a technical foul in that run. This was really one of the worst games Drummond's played this season. It was, without a doubt, the worst game Reggie Jackson has played this season. He was 0 for 9 from the floor. I think he had 2 points and a rebound and 3 assists or something. Just a really poor game. For something that is basically like a measuring stick of sorts for this team, it was pretty disappointing to see them come out as flat as they did and really never mount much of a challenge until pretty late in the game, just too late, really.
Certainly. And then at home, too, it was a chance. Like you said, it's a measuring stick. And, I watched some of this game, and all I could tell you is that Aaron Baines, to me, is the X factor. And, of course, it's 5 points a game and 5 rebounds. People were being snarky with me on Twitter, but it's just he's physical, and he can test shots, and he can take charges, and he can set screens, and he can make passes. It's like all I kept seeing from him was the guy that did all the little things that were really hurting the Pistons. And it kind of felt like Drummond was sort of suffering from that. What do you think on the Celtics side, just by watching that, about this big lineup, by the way, with having Horford and Baines in the starting lineup?
I really like that lineup especially against teams that can size up against them. Baines played for the Pistons last year and the year before, and the Pistons really miss him. I think that that big lineup with Baines to provide some interior muscle and size, and Horford to do all the things that Al Horford does, I think that's a real problem for some teams.
Yeah, I mean, and Horford. Okay, we also had this big argument. Maybe you can help me settle it. Is who's the better player? Who's the best player in the Celtics between Horford and Kyrie? I kind of think it's silly because it just seems like it's Kyrie. But you know what? You watch Horford out there, and I totally understand what they're saying. So what's your take on that question or that debate?
I think at a glance you just figure Kyrie because he's got all the skill. He's the scoring flair on this team, But then Al Horford just does everything well. He's perhaps the best defender on this team. Or top 3 at the very least. He's a great playmaker. He just kind of makes everybody better. And so maybe Kyrie is the better player, but I think maybe Al Horford is, for this Celtics team, probably just maybe the best fit. And I think he'd probably be the best fit of the two of them on most teams.
For sure. So well, let's talk about some. Yeah, I know it is, and certainly skilled wise, it's Kyrie without question. But Brad Stevens has got a really nice team, capital T team here, and I'm anxious to see how they match up against the Cavaliers and into the playoffs. How that's going to work. But what are some of the bright spots for the Pistons that you saw today?
Anthony Tolliver was really good. I think he played. I'm checking this here to make sure, but he played 22 minutes, scored 15 points on 9 shots. And for a team that shot 33% from the field for the entire game, that's one of the few bright spots. Boban was pretty good in a few minutes. Eric Moreland, he just basically doesn't score, period. But he extended some possessions. He made life miserable around the rim for the Celtics when he was on the floor. I'd say really those 3 were probably the only real players that really shined for the Pistons. The usual cast of characters, the starting lineup basically across the board was pretty dreadful. Tobias Harris had a couple nice shots towards the end that sort of narrowed the margin a little bit, but again, it was just too little, too late. But I think those 3 guys in particular were really the only players that stood out for the Pistons.
Okay. And what's your prognosis here? And by the way, like, you had your couple starters have terrible games, and yet they lost by 10. They were kind of, hanging around a little bit. But what's your prognosis, I suppose, for the rest of the season? What's going to happen with the Pistons, and what are they going to get in the playoffs? What are they going to do in the playoffs? How far are they going to get?
They came through this really tough stretch where they played 6 really challenging teams in a row. And they lost, with the exception of the very first game against the Wizards, they lost all of them by just a few points. If you look at Avery Bradley, if he shoots more than 37%, I think, from the floor over the middle 3 games, you probably have a different story over these last few games. It's kind of tough to tell because right now they're at a real low point. They've looked pretty badly, but they've also played poorly and still kept, like you said, pretty close with good teams. So I think most Piston fans are lower on this team now than they were, say, a week and a half ago. I thought maybe coming into this stretch, they were maybe like a low 50s win team. Maybe they're a little bit closer to the original upper end estimation of them, which is maybe mid 40s in wins, which I think is progress.
Sure. Well, we'll have to see, but this was great progress to actually interact with you today and get a great breakdown of the game. Tell everybody out there how they can find you and where you are on the internet to they can read your stuff.
You can follow me on Twitter at Duncan Smith NBA. My cat's trying to jump on here. He doesn't have a Twitter. You can find my stuff on the Athletic Detroit and on BBallBreakdown, of course. I've got a few pieces up there. Now, including one about how great Reggie Jackson has played lately. So that was well timed.
Yeah. Oh, well. Well, you know what? Maybe it'll spur him on for the next game, so we'll see. But maybe. Again, Duncan, thank you so much for bringing your insight into this stuff, and we'll do this again sometime.
Thanks, Cody. Appreciate it.
Got it. Bye-bye. Okay, so that was that. We have our next game, which is Denver, Indiana. And that means that the one and only James Hollis, Snotty Drippin, is going to join us today and talk about what he thought of that game. And if we press a button here and I hit this button, he will join us in a few seconds. And I'm very excited to hear what he thought about the game because it was spirited and it went down to the wire in overtime. And James Hollis, welcome.
What up, Coach? This is the Victor Oladipo show.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, he went for a career high 47. He kept them in the game. Early on, looked like Denver was going to run away with it. Wilson Chandler came out the gate smoking hot. I think he scored like 11 points, 12 points in the first quarter. And then Myles Turner had a little trouble getting it going. But my guy Gary Harris was playing well.
Yeah.
They were down I think it was a little over 3 minutes left to go, and I thought the game was over. I pretty much stopped watching, and then next time I turned back, it's overtime, and I see that Indiana's up 10. And I went back and took a look. They finished the game on a 20-2 run, and I mean, what do you expect from Denver? Denver's really struggling right now. They're missing Jokic, of course. They're missing Millsap. And Wilson Chandler just got back from a hip injury a couple of games ago, or I'm not sure if it was hip. He got back from injury a couple of days ago. The real issue with Denver today was the kid. What's wrong with me? What's his name? I got it right
Trey
here.
Lyles?
Trey was actually a star of the day. He went off. He's been playing very well since. Yeah, Trey's been playing very well since Jokic went down. Even though last couple of games he was struggling. He was shooting 27% from the, and tonight he exploded for 25. Jamal Murray's been carrying the load since Jokic went down. He's been averaging up until tonight. He was averaging 16 points a game, probably even more than that because last game he only had 2 points. But he's been playing really well coming into tonight, and they just locked him down. They didn't let him do anything tonight. But the story of the day is Victor Oladipo. Oladipo's been playing like an all-star, and tonight he really put up with the bona fides with 47, I think 7 rebounds, 6 assists. He was getting to the hole. He's showing that pull-up jumper. And people can say what they want about, what happened with Westbrook last year. He wasn't the same player. He looks like a completely different player. He's hunting out contact. He's absorbing contact and finishing through contact. Last year, and the knock on Depot was, as athletic as he was, he didn't like going to the hole, and he didn't like trying to finish over and through people. And this year, he's welcoming it and relishing it. It seems like since he bulked up a little bit this offseason. So he was a decider. Myles Turner played well. Sabonis did play well, but I mean, without that 47 from Depot, this is a blowout.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. I was watching it on my phone while I'm on the bike in the gym, and so it's small. And I mean, I swear to God, it looks like Michael Jordan. The way he came down that stretch, he must have scored. I had to look it up because I'm going to do a breakdown a bit for tomorrow, so stay tuned. But he must have had 6, 8, 10 points like down the stretch, in a row. Every possession is coming down and shooting and scoring and looking that comfortable. And I'll comment on that too, because there's always this kind of subtext about Russ and what happened last year. And I wish we could just live in like he's in Indiana, that's what he's doing now. But I think the bottom line is he would never have been able to do this in OKC regardless, right? Like with Russ, he's just not going to ever have that role. So whatever happened and whatever he did this summer, like this is what he's been able to do.
Here's the thing. Last year, they tried beginning of the year to get him to run the second unit. They tried to get him to, hey, we need you to go in there and be aggressive. And Coach Donovan, we can find the tape repeatedly. We just want Victor to be aggressive. We want him to look for a shot. Because they needed that secondary score. And he just never really clicked as that guy. He was fine playing off for Russ, but once Russ, they left him in the game by himself to try to handle the ball, he wasn't very good at it. I mean, that's just plain and simple. He wasn't. And you can say about confidence and, maybe he just didn't think that was his role. But, I mean, this year he's just unfettered.
Yeah. I mean, it also could be a rhythm. Like, you're so used to Russ with his 30 whatever percent usage rate. And then all of a sudden when he disappears and then you have to do it, it's very difficult. Like, I don't know hardly any guys who can kind of turn it off and on like that and really be that kind of guy. So that's another, I don't blame him for struggling in that role either. But whatever it is, whatever he was eating for breakfast this morning, he should keep doing it because it was really, really impressive. And I'm really excited for him to continue to do well. I love those stories where a guy will struggle for this is years now, right? And he is kind of clicking.
He never really struggled. He was underperforming for his draft position, but he was a good player. He was averaging 16, 4 and 4. His best year, he averaged almost 18. Then last year, he averaged 16. That's not. Yeah. We expected him to be a big time player, and he looked more like a complimentary player. And so he wasn't horrible. Last year, he shot his career high from 3 up until that point. It's just that this year he is on a whole different level, and this is more what you expected of a number 2 pick. So maybe it just took him long enough to develop, and we'll never know what it was. But whatever he is doing, like you said, he has to just keep on doing it.
Great, and that's a great point too. A couple of things that really catch my eye that I love to watch when I'm looking at the Nuggets is, Gary Harris really just I love the way he plays. He didn't shoot fantastically today, but he just makes plays. He plays defense. He's really coming up as one of those top 2 guards in the West, even though it's a long list of them. A guy who I just, I like watching. Will Barton, not so much, but he actually played really well with 21 and 9 assists and 6 boards. They just couldn't hang on. It was an onslaught. Anything else on the Pacers that stood out? I know you mentioned a couple other players. Anything else that jumped out at you?
From the Pacers, let's see. I mean, it's good to see our guy having his concussion. Yeah, I was saying Myles Turner, since the concussion had been kind of up and down. He had a really strong game tonight. Yeah. And again, Lance Stevenson, Lance made him dance off the bench. I like him, man. I mean, every team, of course, something about Indiana brings out the best in Lance and brings out the best in Oladipo, man. Maybe they're the wing whisperers in Indiana. Yeah.
I mean, Lance is like one of those patients that's dying and not dying like that. He's just up and he's down, he's up and down. Although I will say I've watched 3 or 4 Pacer games this year, and it does seem like he is a little bit more consistent. There's a little bit more, and it's like not trying to do too much. It's really what he just needs to do. And for whatever reason, it might be I'd like to know the tell-all book of what happened when he left Indiana and that whole thing, because that just became a mess pretty quick. And then coming back, he's kind of, you're right, he's going to fit back into the spot, and it's working, even though totally different rosters, different coach and everything. But something's there. So what do we think about Indiana? Yeah. Are they going to compete in the playoffs?
I mean, who knows about the playoffs yet? But they do. They're pretty deep. They have some versatility. I know that beginning of the year we were asking which was more real, Orlando or Indiana. Well, obviously Indiana seems like they're a real deal team, and they're gonna be around. They're young. They have some real good contracts. This is the best outcome they could have expected. When just a few months ago they seemed like the world was ending because Paul George wanted to be out of there, and I don't know if irony is the word, but to see the Oklahoma City Thunder struggle the way they are and compare it to what Indiana's doing, that's got to be a really good feeling for Pacer fans.
Oh yeah, that trade, which it seemed like a steal, is now we'll have to see because that could be a win for them as we move along forward, which would be great for them. It's the biggest surprise of the season, I think, right?
I would say, I can't. Yeah, I guess it had to be the biggest surprise of the season. Now, Paul George used to do this some MVP candidate for the first 2 months, and then he'd hit like a wall. Let's see if Oladipo, with this increased usage, increased role, if he can maintain this level of production throughout a whole 82-game season. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're right about that wall, too. We'll have to see how that goes. How many minutes is Oladipo playing per game? That's another interesting question because that would probably speak to that wall you're talking about. I mean, as we do this and press a button here, I'll tell you right now, he's averaging 33 and a half minutes per game. So that's a good sign that he's not going to get worn out too quick. So we'll have to find out. But James, great to have you on. Just lay it down for everybody where we can find you, where we see you, and all that stuff online.
Of course, I'm repping BBallBreakdown. You can find me on Twitter at SnottyDrippin', and then you can find me at Real Ball Insiders. And we do I pod with you guys, and I pod over at the BodPod over with Chris Axman.
Oh, nice. Yes, the 16 Wins a Ring network. I suppose.
No, no 16 Wins a Ring here. No, sir. What's Almighty Baller? What's Chris? Almighty Baller.
Whoops. Yes. Sorry, Chris. But anyway, yes, find everybody over there. And you also, you find them on our podcast. We got to get you back in the pod soon and go over some stuff. So I will catch you on the DMs and make that happen. So everybody follow James, Snotty Drippin'. And James, I'll catch up to you real soon.
Thanks, Coach. You in?
I'm in. You?
You know I'm in.
All right. That was the Denver and Indiana game, and we do have a really special guest coming on. I'm hoping he's going to drop in soon, and that would be Jim Peterson, who is the color commentator for the Timberwolves. He said he was going to come on, and I'm actually texting with him right now, and we'll have to find out if he's going to jump in here really soon. Let me see here. He's not quite in here yet, but I'll wait for him. So maybe what we'll do is we'll go right to Shane Young right now and bring him in to talk about the Philly and the New Orleans game while we're waiting for Jim to come in. So let's do this, and we will do Shane is coming on. Shane Young, a contributor to BBallBreakdown.com, and he's all over the place as well for other different places. And Shane, thank you for coming to us from your dark basement. Uh-oh, we don't hear you. Uh-oh, have you set up your mic, or maybe it's you don't need headphones necessarily, but there's a setting. See if you can, I don't know, choose your mic. Can you see it? Live TV, folks. I'm going to bring up the while we're talking here, and while he figures it out, because I'm not muting you, but you definitely can play around, press some buttons. I'm going to bring up the little box score here, and we can start to talk about that. Are you there, Shane? Is it we hear you now? Uh-oh.
Can you hear me?
Yes, there he is. I knew you'd figure it out. Beautiful.
Yeah.
So we have the Pelicans beating the Sixers, and I think a frustrating game for the Sixers. Break it down. What are your initial thoughts? What do you think? What did you see?
This was a really interesting and weird game for the most part. What I noticed, obviously Joel Embiid, we have to talk about that first. He sat his 5th game of the season with back tightness today. And, being the 5th game of the season, you would think that it would be a lot more. But he's played more games, I think, than a lot of people would have expected this far. I thought maybe he would sit out a few more. But only 5 misses so far. That's a good sign. But, this matchup was one that Embiid definitely really wanted to play, because he had Cousins and Davis going against him, 2 of the 3 or 4 best bigs in the league. But New Orleans actually led by 11 at half. The first half was pretty entertaining. It was just, run and gun, really fast-paced style. I guess since Embiid's not there to, post up a lot, which has always surprised me about Philly this year, that they lead the league in passing, yet Joel Embiid has the most post-ups per game in the league. So, that's kind of a weird dynamic that you would think that the passing would die down as you post up more and take some more dribbles. But yeah, New Orleans led by 11 at the half, and currently the 6th best first half team in the league. They've been really dominant in the first half of games, and then the narrative stuck true today as they lost the lead in the 3rd quarter. I think they got outscored 40-21. Yeah, on the screen, 40-21 in the 3rd by Philly. Which in that 3rd quarter, what I noticed was the offense looked horrible, as predicted, horrible in the 3 minutes without AD and Cousins on the floor. That's what they closed the third quarter with, and it was just not good at all. And it's games like this. Obviously, they came back and won, but it's games like this that where if they would have choked that away, and the other night in Sacramento, that whenever the playoffs come down to the wire in the Western Conference, it's going to be tough for anyone to get in the 8th spot, even though it's kind of down this year. These are the games you have to grind out, the games that you're supposed to win against undermanned competition. What I noticed from Philly's end was probably more interesting to me. In the third quarter, we saw a lot of JJ Redick coming off double stagger screens. They run a lot of curl action for him, which I know you love. His off-ball action is some of the best. It's up there with Korver, what JJ can do. And he had probably his second best game as a Sixer. He had a game, he dropped 31 in Indiana or against Indiana earlier this year. But, I mean, this one he looked fluid. He looked ready to attack. And, New Orleans defense didn't have any answers for him for most of the game. But another thing, Coach Nick, that I want to ask you about is Ben Simmons, because I haven't got a chance to talk to you live yet, so it's pretty cool. But he is so aggressive on the drive, and he doesn't even look like a rookie out there. His feel and IQ, if you watch him play, you would think he's a 4-year guy.
Yeah, I agree. He looks just like that. Although I will say this, I watched the game for a little bit, so it was a little bit out of context, but maybe it was at the very end or whatever, kind of maybe the game was sort of decided at that point. But Simmons looked a little bit disjointed to me. He was like getting his passes tipped and sort of throwing them away, and a little bit just like sort of distracted. And I wonder if there's moments like that happen to him where, he just sort of doesn't stay completely focused and it drops off. Now, you really can't say that for a guy who had 27, 5, and 10 assists in a game.
Yeah,
Did you see any of that during the game?
I mean, there's a few moments in the first half that I saw that it takes him a little bit to really get adjusted to the defense he's going against, which is he's only played 30 games, 25 games as a NBA player, so it's predicted. But I would say that in the third quarter, which was I caught all of the third quarter and all of the fourth, and it was impressive that he was making the right reads. Like there was one possession that JJ Redick ran a pick and roll with Amir Johnson, and Simmons was in the corner. And as soon as JJ came off that screen and roll, he dished to Simmons. Simmons one touch pass into the middle on the rolling Amir, and it was just awesome stuff that a lot of rookies would catch that and be late on the pass, or they would just not make it altogether. And he is very high in terms of facilitation mode, and I love that about him. But obviously the story of the game, though, the fourth quarter, what was impressive to me, the Pelicans only had one lineup that played over 10 minutes, and that was their starters, obviously. But the lineup that did the most damage was whenever they subbed out whenever they played Holiday, Rondo, Etuan Moore, Dante Cunningham, and Anthony Davis. So no Boogie on the floor. And those 8 minutes, Coach Nick, 181 offensive rating in those 8 minutes, which was the second most used lineup. So, I mean, they really made their mark. They really made their mark on this game when Cousins was on the bench. I'm a big fan of Etuan Moore. Like he's probably my favorite Pelican to watch. The way he can just shoot, the way he can just catch and shoot off the corners. I mean, I love the way he plays. And he's been impressive on both ends to me. But what are you seeing from Boogie Cousins this year? Because there's a weird theme to where when he's on the bench, they still do well in some moments.
I can't deny, like, the numbers are there, the dominance is there, you see all of it, but there's just something frustrating about watching him play, and it wears on the teammates. It has to, because there's always a sense of something wrong going on with him, right? There's always a sort of a negative cloud following him around, and it's either the referees or it's an opponent, and so I don't know if I would want him on my team, honestly. Like I would love the 25 and 10, whatever it is, but I just don't know if it's in the long run the thing that's going to lead you to success. And I'm not surprised that you're going to tell me that when he's on the bench they still do pretty well with AD alone. That's the future of the league anyway. Although let's not hide the fact that Boogie is the future of the league as well. He can shoot threes, he can drive, he can post up and all that stuff. So I don't know. I can't get a handle on him, and it's probably worthy of doing a big video to finally express some thoughts and stare at him for a while. But does that make sense?
Yeah, as someone in the chat, I believe it's Landon Duvall, unless it's backwards, he was mentioning how the lack of boxing out, and that's something that was a big theme in this. Like Davis and Boogie, you would think would be one of the most dominant offensive or defensive rebounding, both offensive and defensive rebounding teams and duos, but they were getting smashed for a good portion of this game in terms of the rebounding margin. And that's what really allowed Philly to have some second chance opportunities in third quarter. And Ben Simmons was feasting on everything out there. So, I mean, it was funny. Our good friend Mason Ginsberg was saying how maybe we're in Oshik to get some boards because he's been more valuable in that aspect. So it's kind of weird with New Orleans.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, let me say this. As I have a tab open, it's making noise. That's ESPN. Shame on you. Which one is it? Is it this one? I muted them all. Oh, here it is. Sorry. All right. But I did want to mention that one thing I really like about the Sixers right now as we wrap up is the trade for Booker. Really going to help them. Really a nice fit for them, and really energy, doing all the things. And on a better team, he's going to. Although the Nets weren't a bad team either. I really like his fit. I think they're going to really like them there.
Oh yeah, he hasn't got a chance to play with Embiid yet. Played 25 minutes, 24 minutes tonight, something like that, and had a pretty efficient game offensively. One more thing, Nick, about New Orleans side here. It was hard to take away anything because Embiid wasn't out there. I would really want to see them going against Davis and Boogie. Jrue Holiday just might be the best 28% three-point shooter the league has seen, because it's astounding that he shoots 28% from three this year, but gets hot in the best moments that New Orleans needs him, and really elevated them into that victory. So the games that I've watched, he's probably shot 45% from three. And then other times when he's playing down to his competition, 28% this year. So,
well, that's always been his issue. We did a thing like maybe 2, 3, or 4 years ago when he was with the Sixers, and the top 20 scores, and we looked at how they did against the top defenses and the bottom defenses, and he was the number one guy that was feasting on the bad teams and then doing really badly against the good teams, which means you can't necessarily rely on him in the playoffs, and or just want to rely on him for consistency. So I suspect there's probably something still there about that, at least the up and down nature, and that's what also could be concerning for them as they go forward. But either way, great breakdown, great insights. Thanks for doing a part 2 with us to finish up your thoughts, and tell everyone out there where they can find you, where they can read you, and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah, guys. First, thanks, Coach Nick, for bringing me on. It's been 3 years overdue. And you can find me at YoungNBA on Twitter. My stuff on BBallBreakdown. Got some stuff coming out soon in the next couple of days on the Toronto Raptors. So definitely check that stuff out. And at FanRag Sports, where I do some other side writing.
Awesome. Well, Shane, thanks very much for joining us. We'll do it again, and we'll do it often. This is great, and we'll check you soon. Okay, now we have the last game on the schedule. Boom, we're running through all these quickly, and we got my buddy Tommy D to talk about the Knicks game today, which I'm sure he'll be excited to talk about as soon as I close this window out and press this button and that button. And we're going to bring him on. Tommy is the Knicks expert, the triangle expert, the guy that we like to go over on privately about the triangle and reminisce about that. But here we are with his green headphones, Tommy D.
Luck the Irish, not the Celtics. I'm in, Coach. How are you?
I'm in too. Great to hear you. Great to see you. So we have the game here, and the if I call up the right tab, which is here, where did they go? There we go. The Knicks pulled it out, 111-107, and we had some highlights. So what were your takeaways to start off?
Well, if you enjoyed free throws and a lot of whistles and stoppage of clocks for maybe some head scratching calls, this was the game for you. And if you were a Knicks fan and wanted to relax this weekend, thinking that you were playing the 2 worst teams in the Eastern Conference, who had a combined at the time I think 9 wins or so in the Bulls and the Hawks, and you thought you're going to get 2 easy ones, that obviously wasn't the case. So it's the Knicks have done well here early on. They've played the majority of the games at MSG. They've had some good wins there. Playing without Hardaway Jr. has been a challenge for them tonight. Doug McDermott was able to step up. Jeff Hornacek has said it a few times here over the last couple games. It's always about the next man up and who's going to be the guy to step forward. McDermott certainly was really good tonight. I want you to really zone in on McDermott and Kyle O'Quinn, because I looked at it about a week ago or so, and McDermott was shooting something like 89% on passes just from O'Quinn. And sort of vice versa, but they had 3 really nice exchanges. McDermott does a great job cutting baseline. You know how much I like the triangle, how much I respect the triangle. We've talked about this a lot. I want to make sure that I destroy any narratives out there from trolls maybe who are watching. My favorite offense really is the flex. It's an offense that we ran when I was in high school and played in high school, when I coached in high school. It's an unstoppable offense. It's an offense that I wish that they ran more. I wish Mike Woodson ran it more when they had Carmelo really feasting in his office on both pinch posts, specifically on the left side. They could never get J.R. Smith to cut enough. They could never get Shumpert to cut enough, probably because they didn't understand the basics of the flex offense. Hornacek's run a ton of it this year, and when McDermott comes in the game, he really does a great job of sort of running that baseline cut, getting a lot of finishes in N1. Speaking of lineups, you were talking to Shane earlier. The Knicks really stretched out the lead early fourth quarter with Ron Baker, Ntilikina, Lance Thomas. Beasley fouled out in about 5 minutes, so he was only on there for a little bit. Porzingis, and I'm trying to remember, and McDermott. That was the five that took them, really stretched their lead out. And Atlanta made it close at the end with a couple of whistles. But all in all, it was a pretty solid win for a team that's playing without a guy who's their second leading scorer. And I looked at this note too, Coach, before he got hurt. Hardaway Jr. and Porzingis were both in the top 6 in clutch points in the fourth quarter. We all know that's, the game under 5 minutes with, within 5 points, either side within 5 points. So not playing with a player of Hardaway's caliber, who was playing well. Remember the Toronto game, almost had the triple-double. They were able to get a good win, get back to 500.
Absolutely. The funny thing about Ntilikina is that I swear to God, whenever I turn the TV on into the middle of the Knicks game, he hits a 3. And I know he's not even shooting that well from 3. I'm going to check it right now. He's shooting, 27.5%. He's not even taking hardly any, but it's weird. I swear to God, it happens that way. And every game I've seen, he looks better and better. He really is. He seems like he's getting more and more comfortable. And I don't know. I mean, he's got these long arms, and he can really play defense at that position. I don't know what we ultimately are going to expect from him. What do we see him, 3 years from now as he develops? Who is he going to be?
I was very lucky the other night. I was at the Garden, and I was sitting with John Hollinger, who's been an idol and just a hero of mine for a very long time, and had the opportunity to talk to him through a really good friend of mine. And when I zoned in on Ntilikina, the first thing that jumped out at me is, okay, he's 19. Do you see anything about, is the game too big for him? Is he overwhelmed? The first thing that jumped out to me was his composure. Obviously, his length is why he's in the league, and his IQ and his ability to defend really 3 positions. He can handle the ball. He plays well off the ball. I agree with you. He surprised me at just how good he is off the catch. His shooting numbers are low because he doesn't set himself all the time. He throws up some runners, when guys just aren't open, and it's kind of, at the end of the shot clock and kind of just has to get the ball up. But he can, I think what's most exciting for me is that if they do add that sort of dynamic dribble drive player that everybody thinks that they passed on in Dennis Smith, who I think, there are 2 or 3 guys in this coming draft now who are probably just as good. I mean, if you watch Sexton last night in that Alabama-Arizona game, I mean, that kid's incredible. It just seems that year over year, that type of player just comes out in droves. But in the media, everybody wants to say, hey, listen, the Knicks whiffed on this new point guard that they haven't had in so long. Ntilikina is a rotation guy. I think he'll morph into a good leading guard, but at the very least, in the meantime, he's going to be able to play off the ball and then defend 3, maybe 4 positions.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited about that. That's the case. And I think that the Knicks have a nice little team here. Are they going to just kind of hover around 500 the whole year and maybe sneak into the playoffs?
It's funny because they've played 17 home games, only 9 road games, and they're 1-8 on the road. So people will say, well, they're going to have to play more road games, and that's going to really balance a lot of things out. But when you look at kind of their schedule as they head in towards the first of the year, their road games really aren't that difficult. They play at home Tuesday against Lonzo Ball and the Lakers coming to town, which is obviously a winnable game. Then they're at Brooklyn, which is a winnable game. And their other road games are Charlotte, which is winnable, Detroit, obviously a tough team, but potentially a winnable game. Back in Chicago on the 27th, right after Christmas. We know Ben Simmons comes to town with the Sixers on Christmas Day to the Garden. And here's the point on Simmons, which you guys were talking about before. I saw the stats on him the other day. The fastest player in the league who plays fastest with the ball and leads in drives per game. So at 6'11", the guy's the fastest player with the ball and drives it pretty much every possession. Not sure how you stop that guy. Maybe you just got to keep fouling him and send him to the line. But that's the Ben Simmons aside there. Again, in Chicago and then San Antonio Pelicans to kind of end out the year. So they're going to play road games, but not the toughest road games. So they'll hover around 500 here for a little while, assuming Porzingis stays healthy and assuming Jared Jack doesn't run out of gas and assuming they get back Hardaway Jr. here to be able to contribute and be that second scorer.
Now, is Willie going to be just relegated to the bench? I love what I saw last year in the little bits of time. He's just in the doghouse, or what's going on with him?
Yeah, Hornacek wants to see him earn. Well, let's put it this way: O'Quinn has played well, Cantor's played very well, and then where are the other minutes? Right? I mean, you're really only going to play those two guys at the 5, and then Porzingis is going to play 30+ minutes. So where's Willie getting these big minutes? I mean, Cantor can take nights off. Then you've got Noah, who's about ready to come back and get minutes. You heard Scott Perry say the other day they're not going to buy him out. They think he could still contribute. I think Noah can definitely contribute. So the good news with the Knicks with Billy is that they don't have to make a decision on him yet. I think they had an opportunity to trade him to Denver on draft night and target Donovan Mitchell, who's someone who they like. They like Ntilikina and Donovan Mitchell 1-2. I can tell you that as a fact. The fact that they weren't able to pull any deal off for Mitchell is something that I think probably they're kicking themselves, certainly at this point. But I think they may, if they want to make a decision with Billy, it'll be to bring in the kind of veteran point guard. Is it a Rubio type or somebody along those lines who can come in and be that stopgap, in the meantime, as Ntilikina, and then if they draft another young guard next year. They have a glut up top. Do you want to trade O'Quinn? Do you want to package Courtney Lee and Willie and O'Quinn and see if you can get a better player? I don't see those type of deals on the horizon. And there's still plenty of time before the trade deadline. So for now, it is what it is with Hernangomez.
Yeah, that's too bad. I think he just needs experience and time out there. And we're seeing his brother over in Denver, which would have been funny if they got together there, having some success as well in little fits and starts. So they just, those are the kind of guys who need time. So we'll see. It's a long season and crazy things happen where all of a sudden he's thrust into a big role. You never know. But again, I think you're right. I think that they'll hover around 500. It seems like barring terrible injuries. And you know what? They'll sneak into the playoffs and. They'll probably lose the Cavs or lose the Celtics, but maybe they'll win a game or two. And it's something to be rejoiceful about, I suppose, because if I'm not mistaken, it's been a long time since the Knicks have even made the playoffs. Well, when was the last time with Melo?
2012, 2013, losing to the Pacers when Melo tried to dunk on Hibbert, and that didn't work out so well. I think they're in a position now where if they do make the playoffs. That's great experience for Porzingis. It's great experience for the young players. That's certainly a goal. I like how Scott Perry's been vocal about the fact that, this idea of institutional losing is hard to get out of your building. That's the stuff that you want to hear from your leadership. That's the stuff that you want to hear from your front office, not in a way where, Phil Jackson saying, he thinks that this is a playoff team, when you're playing Jason Smith and Shane Larkin. It's nice to be optimistic, and trust me, I'm as optimistic as anybody, and I get killed for it every day. But I liked hearing Scott Perry say, we're trying to win, and they have the guy in Porzingis, as long as he can stay healthy, who can win games for you, night in and night out, at least at home. And if you're in that 38 to 42 win range, then you're probably, in years past you would be guaranteed a spot. I don't know if that's going to be the case this year, but at the very least, if you do make it. You have picks if you want to really move up in the draft and try to. They have other assets, but also picks. We talked about Billy to move into the back end of the lottery if you target a player that you really like. So I think if you finish in that 15, 16 range, you can move into that 8, 9 range in the draft if you really like the player that's there to go get him and you trade a future first pick.
Okay. Well, we got to finish this up. We have a question from Vinny, who's been waiting patiently in our room here. Which, by the way, in the next show is when we blast out the link to this show. You should come over here. You can ask questions either via video or audio or by text, like Vinny just did. And here's his question: Hi guys. Will the Knicks become buyer or sellers at the deadline, considering all the skilled bigs they have? They're probably the best big men team in the league from top to bottom. So, Tommy, what do you think? Are they gonna make a move here before the deadline?
That's a great question, Vinny. I think it still remains to be seen. I agree with you. And I like that they're playing to their strengths with the big guys. It is, unfortunately at the expense of not getting Billy Hernangomez that experience and getting the reps and the like. But I think you have to see what's on the market. You have to see who the other sellers are. If Ricky Rubio's on the market, or if there's another drive point guard who can defend and also has a nice assist percentage rate, somewhere in the range of like 10, 12%. That's going to be able to make sure you're not taking touches away from Porzingis, and is getting Hardaway the ball in rhythm and is getting Courtney Lee the ball in rhythm. Those are the guys that's the type of thing where you deal from your position of strength and then try to get back that player who may be here for, 2 to 3 years. And stabilize that position. Listen, Jared Jack's been very good, but I think everybody understands they need an upgrade there. And, to get someone who's younger, who pairs a little bit better with the wings, who's able to get to the basket and then kick out, play off the ball with Ntilikina as well. That's something I think that they'd really be looking for. If that player's not available, then I'm not sure they're going to be in a rush to make any deal. But I think their assets start with Courtney Lee, and I think their assets start with O'Quinn. So you kind of start from there. All
right. Well, that's a great answer. You want one more quickie?
Sure.
Let's do it. One more quickie. Can the Knicks win 50 games this year? Phil wants to know.
Phil had a couple other questions, but this one seems serious. So right. I don't think the Knicks can win 50 games this year.
Okay, me neither. But they're on their way. They're on their way. Well, Tommy, I think that you should win 50 games this year with your with your beautiful breakdown with us of the game tonight and the very thorough information you just brought to us. So let everyone know out there where they can find you and read you and all that kind of stuff on the internet.
On Twitter @ThomasCD, and then patreon.com/TOMMYDEE. And, some freelance stuff that if I have time to do, I'll be popping it around, maybe even for BBallBreakdown.
Hey, we are always looking and always welcome, and our arms are outstretched to you, Tommy, friend of the breakdown, as always. Great stuff. Thank you for joining us, and I will see you soon.
Thanks, Coach. Always a pleasure.
Okay, well, that is our live wrap-up show on a Sunday. I think that was brilliant. It worked really well, except for the Jim Peterson thing, but whatever. We'll figure that out one day on the phone. But other than that, I can't thank you guys enough for joining us today. This was fantastic. And I don't know, guys. We'll catch you up next time. And I'll do another one of these where we'll actually answer more questions directly from you guys. But we're getting a little bit late long in the tooth here, and it's late for the East Coasters. So I'll post this thing up on YouTube first thing in the morning. And again, thanks for joining us. And don't forget, sports fans, at BBallBreakdown, we're not a channel. We're a conversation. You win.